first story, I wanted to take a look at this Forbes article titled, "Is This the Perfect Time for Central Bank Digital Currencies?" And, considering the context of the times that we live in, when it comes to matters surrounding coronavirus and the current pandemic, Forbes is declaring that this is an opportunity for government to begin implementing digital currencies right now, that this is the time to get these CBDCs out there, and that they are going to be an inevitable result as government continue to escalate their fiscal response to the widespread economic damage that has been wrought by coronavirus over the last few weeks. Businesses shutting down, job losses soaring, future growth looking bleak. So, back at the end of March, the International Monetary Fund officially declared that the global economy has entered into a recession. And since then, we've seen Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, the California governor, the C.D. Howe Institute, all sounding the same recession alarm bells. In order to respond to all of this, governments across the world have deployed aggressive stimulus measures, starting with aggressive rate cuts and providing emergency liquidity to markets, followed by bailouts for Main Street, with checks being mailed to individual citizens. Now, what comes next for the economy could begin to resemble nationalization of industries, the retail sector, or supply chains in general, nationalization of these aspects of the economy. Now, while the government's response has been unprecedented and it may very well soften the economic blow, it also might potentially fuel a sharp recovery in Q3 and Q4 if indeed things do blow over very quickly. The idea of the government funding every family in America to the tune of thousands of dollars per month, per household, has actually become very fashionable, whether or not the crisis is resolved quickly. Like, this idea of universal basic income is very, very popular nowadays. And government bureaucrats and policymakers who find themselves holding the reins of power in the economy are now in kind of charge of making the decision of who goes back to work and who remains shuttered. This is what we've allowed to happen. We've allowed the government to gain these reins of power and make the decision based on a virus that we don't even have good numbers on. And a lot of people in today's world are arguing that that's a good thing, that government should be in charge of making major economic decisions and even be responsible for providing individuals basic goods and services, that it's their job to provide what we need, not their job to protect our rights to go secure our own. Now, this is where the concept of a central bank digital currency can really take hold, unfortunately, though, and gain political traction, right? What better way is there to make well-informed policy decisions about the economy than by leveraging an unparalleled insight into the spending habits of your citizens via a centralized database executed by a CBDC, right? This offers central planners unprecedented insight into the economy and individual purchasing habits. By harnessing the power of these digital currencies, government officials will basically be right to believe that they have obtained a far better sense of key business activity in the economy. And that gives them insight to where money is flowing and what is drawing investment. Now, this information, the big data wet dream that digital currency brings with it, helps governments or allows governments to pinpoint what industries or areas of the economy need the most attention, idealistically, while also making it easier to track and evaluate in real time what effect any economic stimulus that they're providing is actually having, right? So in this article, Forbes spoke with John Idaluce, founder and CEO of the private equity firm Bands Capital, and he emphasized that, basically the dazzling possibilities presented to government by CBDCs, and he described their potential as undeniable. According to Idaluce, the U.S. policymakers and citizens alike see that stimulus checks are faced with huge roadblocks, which could be solved via CBDCs. Could also be solved by Bitcoin. I digress. Now, according to this MarketWatch story from late April, the Internal Revenue Service has only recently begun mailing physical stimulus checks to American citizens. But according to a House Ways and Means schedule, distribution is projected to take as long as 20 weeks. And these sort of delays can be extremely inconvenient at times like this. to say the least. CBDCs would offer the promise to politicians and their hungry electorate that the government bread can be distributed quickly and effectively using these CBDCs. In other words, the public and our leaders are very receptive to this idea of removing barriers to giving people free money. Or as Ida Lucha puts it, these digital currencies provide citizens access to these payments in a fraction of the time through a streamlined, immutable monetary system, right? Well, it's already immutable because the government has the, army behind them. But I digress. Immutable for the government, not immutable for us. One-way immutability when you're using government currency. Now, it seems that politicians are now, of course, starting to finally take notice, because if we go by this article, congressional representatives have tabled 32 cryptocurrency-related bills in the past year alone. Now, back on the Forbes article, Forbes went on to speak with Matthew Dibb. He's the co-founder at Stack, Stack is an asset management platform, who said that central bank digital currencies not only help with the distribution of stimulus checks, or could help with the distribution of things like stimulus checks, but they also open up the door to novel monetary policy initiatives, such as airdrops to the people. What we know as airdrops in cryptocurrency. Airdrops to the people to stimulate spending on the fly, right? Government politicians are like, hey, like Minnesota ain't spending a lot of money. Like, we're not getting a lot of tax. Let's just spread it out there real quick. In Minnesota, airdrop. Now, according to Dibb, injections like this, central bank digital currencies into the economy, could be done in such a way that the money cannon gets aimed directly at specific industries, stimulating them economically that much more effective. And as Ida Lucha reported or noted, we've recently witnessed heavy amounts of capital flow out of the travel industry, and it took place faster than the unprepared economy could track. And the result to us as the taxpayer was a $25 billion bailout. But according to him, in a CBDC environment, the government could be alerted to an impending domino effect from something such as tumbling airline industries. With transactions being categorized and calculated, the government can move in a moment's notice, like the Flash, kind of like the, totalitarian overlord Flash, to prevent economic disasters. Because we don't have a sound monetary system. They could just give us a sound monetary system, but we can patch it up. It's okay. Now, despite all of these potential benefits, just waiting for our economic stewards to discover, most digital currency enthusiasts like myself are offering dire warnings about the negative consequences CBDCs could have when it comes to matters of privacy. And that's not just consumers, but business as well, right? Quoting Jake Joachim Pyatt, that's the man behind the Decred blockchain. Since CBDCs are necessarily centralized, this centralized control over the network would give central banks access to an unprecedented amount of data about individual and collective transaction patterns. Now, while there are potential positive aspects to this, right? Like, for example, an ability to be more accurate and measured when issuing credit where it is deemed necessary. There are also myriad negative privacy implications. This centralized control means that individuals or groups can be instantly flagged, surveilled, and even deplatformed economically, all at the whim of the central bank. Whether it's them, their own authority, or agents of the central bank, that is the Treasury or any government legislator who gets this power in their hand. While individual commercial banks, for all their faults, still offer a buffer from government overreach, and some competitive market forces to retail banking still remain compared from the perspective of policymakers, as opposed to decentralized crypto. The advantages that CBDCs offer on their face, right, prima facie, is in terms of transaction speed and transparency to authorities, right? But this largely comes at a cost to privacy and autonomy, which is, the point of decentralization in the first place. Now, adoption of central bank digital currencies to distribute stimulus will ostensibly be used to claim the government is being responsible in its disbursement of such fortunes. Of course, you've always got the right that comes in and says, well, the government spending is unaccounted for. It's terrible bookkeeping. And if there was just better bookkeeping, things might be a little bit better around here. Audit the Fed. So yeah, there you go. They're going to use that as the excuse, right? They're going to use that as the reason to implement CBDCs. So they're like, well, you guys have been saying that our bookkeeping has been terrible. Like, so we're going to get better bookkeeping. We're going to have a central database where it's all immutable and on the blockchain. After all, these modern digital ledgers boast transparency and accountability, and therefore will allow the government to claim It is less prone to corruption or mismanagement solely thanks to the advances provided by this new age of digital currencies. Right? Not through means of their own, just through this man. So soon, politicians are going to be finding themselves at odds with their electorate if they oppose digital currencies. Because again, you're going to, everything that I just described to you, which sounds good for the government, is going to sound good to any normal person because normal people don't care about privacy. Again, just as I said earlier, right? Retail individuals don't buy Bitcoin until they actually lose money from their investments and they see that Bitcoin did well and then they buy Bitcoin. Most people don't actually go out and do the research on their own to learn about what's new, to be a pioneer. Most people are comfortable being spoon-fed. As times continue to get worse and as things get a little bit more desperate, political forces are going to start playing with the idea of a permanent subsidy to every household here in America. And you will indeed see broad political support for such allowances and central bank digital currencies that make them possible. But still, the sweeping adoption of CBDCs under the auspices of fiscal stimulus and economic rescue is going to move consumer spending data almost certainly out of the hands of private companies and the payment systems that are currently being used to trace it and track it, and move it all onto digital ledgers that central governments solely monitor and control. So, while we don't enjoy a lot of privacy right now, do not think for a minute the existing system isn't harvesting every little bit of consumer data it can on you. It's going to get a whole lot worse when Big Brother has sole domain over all of the metadata of the entire economy. So what we've outlined here, that the public support for a digital fiat may be building under the radar right now as we speak. But we do have to remember what the cost to privacy will be and what the overall direction for the economy is that this is all steering us towards. Then, of course, there's the matter of privacy. There is a meaningful difference between the transaction data being collected across a variety of private companies and their payment networks versus the transaction data that will all be held in a government monitored ledger, with each account clearly assigned to a particular citizen. You are Rick C137, right? So where do you guys stand on the CBDC issue? Do you too think that this is inevitable? And pretty soon, the average electorate is going to be demanding a digital fiat, and the politicians are going to be more than happy to oblige? Make sure to let us know in the comment section down below. I'll do my best to reply to you guys over the next 2 hours. And of course, you can hop in the Discord and chat this out.